Great. I guess probably we shall start now. Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Rasdeep Pundi. I'm your host today, and I'm also the co-founder of AddSkill. AddSkill is an educational company with a mission to empower individuals to learn, earn, and grow while we are investing in your success. We have our next batch starting for full stack development starting 26th of December. Welcome back to the fourth episode of the AddSkill Career Talk series, Community. And for today's webinar, we have with us Mr. Ritesh Nayak, who is a software engineer from Google, and he'll be with us for the next 1 hour. Uh, and I think the entire fundamentals of the webinar still remains the same. So we'll have Q&A session between me and Ritesh for the first 35-40 minutes, and we will keep last 15 to 20 minutes for the open to all the participants and the audience to post all their questions. While we are having a conversation, if in case you have any questions, feel free to put it on the chat section, and we'll be happy to take it towards the end of the webinar. So yeah, I think with that, let me start with the introduction here. Guys, Ritesh is a graduate from BITS Pilani. He finished his MSc Tech in Information System in 2016. I know it sounds like a bit weird degree, but we BITSians know this. He joined Stazilla as a business analyst in 2016, right? Where he has worked on various analytical tools. However, the company was not able to sustain and survive the tough, travel and tourism market, right? And during the company closure, he was actually approached by the then CEO of Stazilla to join hands in his own startup. And he offered him the role of data scientist, where he worked for a short period of about 6 months before the company got acquired by Google. And I guess that was the quickest acquired I've ever heard in my life. And I guess Ritesh would probably put some more points to it. I think there was what 3 or 4 employees by the time they got acquired by Google. So yeah, from there he then joined Google as a software engineer, and he's currently working with Google. So thanks Ritesh, thanks for taking time and joining us in here. Right. So
Absolutely.
that's yeah. So if you could add to your introduction, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I think the detail that is most relevant to this talk is that I have been in Google for 3 years and I've been interviewing for Google. Like I've been interviewing candidates for Google for more than 2 years now. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding what it takes to join a company like this. And happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great. Thanks, Ritesh. With that, let me start the question, right? And I think the first question that probably, if you guys have heard about the introduction when I was saying, right, I said that he started as a business analyst in Stazilla, right? And that's going to be an important thing, right, Ritesh? So I think the first question is around that, right? How an engineer who started as a business analyst, right, got into Google as a software engineer within a period of 2 years. So, I mean, how was the journey been?
So yeah, I think it it helped me along the way that when I was a business analyst, we were actually given roles where we had to learn some extent of software engineering. So even though I started out with just simple SQL queries and then basic dashboarding, eventually, like 4 months into the job, I was writing map reduce pipelines and I was coding Luigi pipelines in Python. So some software engineering that makes uh, custom solutions for exactly the requirements of your job. So a lot of times softwares, they don't give you what you really need, and you have to get your hands dirty and create them. So that background helped on one hand. On the other hand, I had done my major in computer science. I anyways was aware of basic concepts of software engineering. I was never a topper of my class, but I had a good idea of the concepts. And then before my interview, I was fortunate to get a 2 month period of just focused learning, and I just made use of that to prepare myself for the kind of questions that they typically ask and brush up my concepts for of software engineering before I interviewed, and I think that is what added up in the end.
Right. But uh, I'm assuming the work domain would be very different, right? In terms of role perspective, right? From business analyst to a software engineer. So, I
It
mean,
was.
yeah,
So uh, I think the one good thing about the Google interview process is that uh, when they are interviewing for a level 3 software engineer, which is basically a fresher, someone who has just recently graduated out of college, all they care about is how good you are at data structures and algorithms. So even though you might be behind a lot of other candidates who will easily cook up some program ready to go, they care about whether you are able to take a vague problem and then you're able to break it down into components that can be solved with good data structures and algorithms, whether you're able to figure that out. So I think that is what helped me. I just focused on that, basically getting a good idea of data structures and algorithms and how to use them to solve real world problems, and break real world problems into simpler components so that I could use them. That and then once I got in, I was just learning on the job.
right. Interesting. So you talked about breaking down a real world problem into smaller chunks, right? So if you
Right.
could probably, I don't know if it's coming to on top of your mind, can you think of any problem and maybe give some example in terms of how our participants could think of and relate more to it?
Oh, sure, sure. So I remember there was uh, there was this question about uh, an IDE. So basically, whenever you're coding, you just as you are typing the class name or the variable name, it starts giving you suggestions.
Right.
And uh, the question, one of the questions that I got in my interview was, how would you uh, make how would you program one of these things? And uh, I actually was unprepared for a question like that, but based on what I had learned, I proposed that maybe a TRIE, a data structure which indexes on the basis of alphabets. So just I compounded a data structure, a basic TRI data structure that would support that, and I just kept on explaining. They did point out that it would have some shortcomings, and over the course of the 40 minutes interview time, based on the shortcomings that they proposed, I tried to figure out how I could fix it, how I could patch the data structure that I was proposing, and yeah, that's just how the interview went. I thought that I bombed the interview, but it actually went well.
That's the interesting part of, I think, interviews, right? You can never
Yeah,
predict what's going to happen.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, that's always the case. Great. I think that sounds interesting. Okay. On the similar lines, I would probably have another question, right? So again, business analyst, software engineer, not making sense. And to me, it will not make more sense because I know Ritesh from, I think, almost from college. It's been more than, I think, 5, 6 years, right? Uh, I'll probably put this question for the audience. Were you clear about the path you would like to take or the company you would like to join in college?
Oh, absolutely not. So I was passionate about computer science. Uh, like I remember seeing a computer on my dad's work desk when I was in standard one, and I just knew that I wanted to do software engineering. In my school, I remember teachers opposing that choice. They said that in standard 12 you should actually take physical education because that will help you crack the competitive exams more easily. But I said that no, as long as there is an option to take computer science, I'm going to take computer science. So while that was there, I never really was obsessed about software engineering in my college. I never was topping my semester. Yeah, I was curious about it, which is why whenever new concepts would be introduced in the lectures, I was curious enough to learn them, but never tried to be like the topper of my class, which is why uh, during my entire college period, I was never even aiming that I would go into Google or Microsoft or a company like that. It just happened to be the case that I got a PPO when I was doing my internship, and I thought that it's a good way and it's a fairly convenient way of becoming financially independent, and that's why I took that offer. And from then on, it I just like it just took me into Google. Like I just kept getting the opportunities where it almost felt like I was getting guided into that path.
Right. I guess probably one learning that I have, and I think one key takeaway that we all can have from here is, I think it's okay to be not sure about the path going forward, right?
Yeah.
I think, but you should be putting your 100% in what you're doing at that point of time, right? As long as you're putting in, you're committed to what you're doing at that point of time, I think things
Mhm.
will fall in place, right? Just give your
Absolutely.
honest, I think, attempt to wherever you are at this juncture and whatever you are doing. I think things will do fall in place. I think Ritesh is a really good designer, right? So I have bugged him a lot for a lot of my design help and support, and he has always been really helpful. So I guess I know Ritesh from the designing end, right? I never knew, let's say, even I'm being close to Ritesh, I never knew that he would probably be so much interested into software engineering side of it, right? So I think that's the important key takeaway from here. That's just stay focused 100% in terms of what you're doing, right? Great. I think probably I'll try and deep dive a little bit more in terms of what you do, Ritesh, in your daily work life at Google, right? And probably share whatever you are comfortable with. And please feel free to say no to me if there is any question which is more intriguing, right?
Sure,
So
sure.
which team or like the product you are working for right now?
So right now I'm working for Google Pay,
Oh, nice.
formerly known as Days. Uh, so we are working on a feature that we have announced. So I think I can talk about it. Uh, so 2 years back, we announced that we would be giving instant loans on GPay. I don't think a lot of people would be aware of it because it's not available to everyone. It's available to just the user base that has been pre-qualified by their banks. So if we have HDFC or ICICI customers in the chat, maybe they would have seen that feature. Other than that, we are slowly rolling out credit cards on GPay. It was launched last month. I was working for that team, and yeah, just mostly efforts related to credit on GPay.
Got it. Any feature that we can currently see right now, which we have used that you have worked on, or are these mostly long-term projects that you have worked on?
I think if you Google credit cards on GPay,
Right.
you'll be able to see that feature. So it's I
Okay.
think it's fairly common now.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Got it. And what's your, let's say, biggest achievement in terms of your professional career so far in the last, like, 4 years, 4.5 years?
So this might be an unusual answer, but so we have 2 week sprints. So basically, we have a meeting at the beginning of a 2 week cycle where we decide the work that we are aiming to do by the end of the 2 weeks period. And I had heard from my TL that, of course, we don't work on an hourly basis. We are given tasks, and if we finish the tasks that we have been given, or like if we finish our sprint in 2 days, then the rest of the sprint we can just roam around. Uh, we are not answerable to anyone. I thought that it's going to be a fantasy thing, but there was this one time when I finished my entire sprint in just a single week, and the other week I was just idling around. Uh, I think with time, work-life balance becomes more and more important, and that is why I view that as my biggest accomplishment.
Right. And probably one of your biggest mistake, or let's say I mean, learning's probably not mistake in the current, I mean, maybe in Google or before that.
So yeah, I think this is something that everyone should take very seriously, and I made the mistake of not taking it seriously. uh, I remember in my first year, this was in Stagela, I was very enthusiastic about my job, especially because I would give very short deadlines, uh, and I would try to meet them, and I would, and then I would get this rush of uh, being showered with praises that, hey, this new guy is really good. He's getting these things done in such quick succession. And I think 3 months or 4 months down the line, my manager huddled me into a meeting room and he said that, hey, you need to give more relaxed deadlines because you will burn out yourself otherwise. And while I nodded in agreement during that meeting, I just took it light. I thought that I am going to be immune to that. But uh, so this meeting happened in September, and in December, I woke up one morning and I just did not want to work. I was so fatigued, I just didn't want to go to office. And I called my manager and said that, hey, I remember you talking about burnout. That's happening, and I'm going to take today off. And my manager said that, listen, do one thing, take the entire week off because it's going to take you an entire week to get rid of this. And yeah, that did happen. Burnout is very real, and I made the mistake of not taking it seriously.
Right. Interesting. Great. I think with that, I'll probably move towards a different question, right? So we do have a lot of folks in the current participant list who are probably not coming from the tier one college,
Hmm.
right? So what kind of chance do they stand right now if they wish to get into top MNCs like Google, Microsoft, and other companies? Do you think they stand a chance? If yes, then what should ideally they be doing right now to probably plan that, hey, next 6 months, 1 year, we can try and get crack Google, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. So there is apparently there is this very widespread myth that to get into Google or Microsoft or Facebook, any of these big companies, you need to be from a tier one college. You need to be from an IIT and or BITS or NIT. Otherwise, your resume is just going to get rejected. Uh, that's a myth. I have been interviewing for Google for the past 2 years, and increasingly I see resumes not belonging to any of these colleges. Majority of the resumes that I see for candidates that I would be interviewing, they're not from these colleges. But one thing that has been common in all of these resumes, all of these candidates, is that they have performed really impressively in hackathons. So there are all of these hackathons that are organized by Google, that are organized by Microsoft, or any. There are many reputable hackathons that keep happening every year, or maybe multiple times a year, and they're open to all. If you just manage to train yourself before the hackathon and get a respectable rank, then everyone would be clamoring to interview you.
Right. Okay. So I think one suggestion is that probably go out and start looking out for these kind of hackathons,
Yep.
and try and attempt as many as you can. Right. There's no harm,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because
Absolutely.
companies, when companies are actually, I think for you guys, right, when companies are actually, I mean, as much as we want the company also wants good candidate, right?
Absolutely.
So the reason
Uh,
why these companies basically conduct these hackathons is to make sure that they're building their database of good candidates, right?
yeah.
They're always on a lookout for good candidates. So, so yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. Anything else, Ritesh, that I mean they should be doing in terms of their resume that you guys look out for? Any specific pointers on the resume?
Yeah. So I think that a lot of times uh, we find some resumes that are unnecessarily long, where they go into a lot of details about why some task was difficult or what they did. So usually, instead of going into a lot of work specific details in your resume, what I think, and this I am giving importance because in many companies where the balance is such that a lot of candidates are applying and then they have to shortlist the resumes, a lot of times many important details do get missed when they're skimming through the resumes. So it's important to keep it short, and what you should focus on is the work that you did. How did it benefit the company? So the impact that it had, just state the impact. difficulty, complexity, all of those things, they will automatically be deduced from the impact that you had.
Right. I think that's a very good suggestion. Keep it short, keep it concise, and the important point to put there is what's the impact, right?
Hmm.
So could be in terms of we saved X $1 million for whatever company, or we save this much time, we reduce the process by this many seconds, minutes, or whatever. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Yeah. I think that's a good suggestion. Anything else that you could think of? So I've heard from a lot of people that there are companies which will parse the resumes, right? So people put words which are like, I don't know, like machine learning and data science, and try and incorporate all those words in the resume. Like, I mean, is there any myth around it? I mean, what's the reality around that?
So I have uh, I have read on the internet
Right.
that there are some companies that do that, but I don't think we do that.
Right.
We do rigorously go through the resumes, because the thing is that uh, when a resume is selected, or a resume is rejected, it's not just that the candidate is losing out. If we reject a resume and the candidate is actually good, the company is losing out on some great talent.
Yeah.
And so it's very important for us to not be callous with the resumes. And so yes, you can game the system, but you will be easily caught. If the thing is that there are so many rounds of interviewing, that even if you have gamed the system and you have got your resume in, if uh, if you do not get past the first round of interview, there is no use of that. And it's best to not rely on make, basically getting a resume that will get you through the hoops. Instead, just focus on what everyone values in resumes anyway, so that your resume by default has a very high chance of getting through whatever selection process that the companies have.
Yeah, makes sense. Great. I think with that, I'll move on to the next question that I have with me. So you have worked in both corporate with Google and also the startup environment, which was Stazilla, and then obviously the next company, right?
Yeah.
So what do you see as the major difference between the two with regards to style of working, with regards to structure that you get? I mean, how are two things different if you have to probably, differentiate?
Yeah. So, well, in a startup, obviously, the mantra is to move fast and break things. So if if we are trying to ship something, it's not uncommon to have the deadline set just 1 week later or 3 days later. A lot of times, the PMs would come up with an idea, and they would say that let's implement it in 3 days, and then we would have bean bags shipped into the office, and engineers drinking Red Bull and working overnights. So shipping a feature in 3 days is a near impossibility in a big company like Google. And I think for a good reason. If you are shipping a feature in 3 days, there is no way it can be tested properly.
Right.
And uh, so the thing is that when there is a startup, there is a small company that is behaving erratically, users are very forgiving. If you are a small company and there is some bug in your website, people find it cute. But if you're a big company and you have a blackout for even 30 minutes, you are trending on Twitter.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, that's a good one. What are the other things, right? I mean, I got one thing which is, let's say, shipping fast, right? And I think in the past three webinars we had, right? So there's another guy who was working with Uber, and in past he had worked with Sav, and he said exactly the same thing. That's it's
Mhm.
sometimes okay to not ship that quickly, right? Same with another product manager who was working with LinkedIn, who's working with LinkedIn right now. He said initially, and he came from Tractor, right? So his point was, hey,
Mhm.
things were moving so quickly, and in all of a sudden in LinkedIn things stopped moving, right? I was not releasing things, or I was not delivering things according to
Mhm.
my expectation,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
did that happen to you? How did you overcome those kind of challenges?
So while the frustration was there, that uh, you so basically I was kind of used to this rhythm of working on something and getting it shipped in 1 week or 2 weeks. But with time, I saw that if something goes wrong, uh, the impact is in millions of users in Google. So it's very, very important to be meticulous, to let it go through rounds of automated testing, then days of manual testing, uh, then testing among internal users, and then shipping it. This entire process, it can take roughly 6 months, but that's fine. At least we are not sending a half-baked product. And we and the thing is that it's one of the reasons why users, whenever a user is choosing a product of a product that is shipped by a reputed company which has been there in the market for a very long time, they mostly do it for reliability reasons. They know that if they're going to use this, they know that it's going to be reliable. It's going to do what they expect it to do. There are no hidden bugs or weird behavior that is going to jump at them, and it's very important to maintain that trust. So that's there. I think one other difference that I have noticed while working in Google and comparing it with the startup culture is that because Google is a company that has been in this area for such a long time, there are a lot of processes and tools which are super polished. So the process around testing, the process around shipping something to a server, uh, even the best practices around coding, those things are so polished that it almost it has been a very it's almost been like I went through a course of software engineering after I joined Google, just by witnessing all these best practices which were never there in Stagela, where I was working before, the startup where I was working before. And I think that is one thing that you do get to see when you get into a company that has been in this area for a very long time. They have a lot of processes which are very polished.
Right. Interesting. And I mean, it kind of echoes with what our past people have said, right? So this guy who's an engineering manager at Uber, he said the exact same thing. He said the tools that you get, right, they're
Hmm.
so ready-made, and I think they sort of help you a lot in terms of process, right? And it's so uh, let's say contrary that even though you have more polished let's say tools to help you and guide you, it's still
Hmm.
taking more time for you to ship the features, right?
Yeah.
And as you said, I think the bottom line is because of the impact. You want to make sure that you don't ship out anything which is faulty and then the servers are down or whatever issues happen for 30 minutes and then you're trending on Google, right?
Yeah.
Or on Twitter, sorry. Right. So yeah, obviously, I think that's bound to happen. Great. Now, I think moving back to, I think based on your experience, right? I think you've been fortunate, or let's say unfortunate or fortunate, either ways, that you've been part of the companies during the shutdown, which was in Stacey Labs,
Hmm.
and then you've also
Yeah.
seen a new company grow from the ground up, right? So, based on your experience, I mean, how was your experience different in the two companies? Were you
Hmm.
able to figure out or take the clues from the environment? That's what's happening with Stagel or what's happening with the newer company before they actually got acquired by Google. Like, how was your experience in both?
Right. So when I was interning in Stacela, uh, we had just raised a round of funding, and there was a lot of enthusiasm going around in the company. And uh, when they extended the PPO, I felt very safe in taking it. When I joined, I could see that the leadership, they were trying to actually maintain the momentum. It I was in the business analysis team. So if there is something wrong going with the team, then we would be the first ones to realize that. And I could see that my team members were realizing that, and they were jumping ship. So the thing is that uh, it's I think that a lot of times you have to choose safety and your instincts, your gut instincts. So a lot of times it's not a bad idea to uh, leave a company because you think that the company does not have the company might be on a downward trajectory. It's not a bad thing. I did that. I chose not to leave the company, mainly because I liked the company. And the reason I liked the company is because I liked the people who were in charge. I liked my manager. I liked the COO. I liked the CPO, and I thought that they were good leaders. And I did believe that if they said that they were trying to turn the company around, even if they fail to turn the company around, that's fine. I wanted to be in their company, and I think that that's a very risky move. And the only reason it made sense for me was because I was a bachelor. uh, Another thing, by the way, talking about the risk of being in a company that is about to go out of business, most, if not all, of our engineers, our staff, found a job within the next 2 months. Uh, Most of the engineering team, they had a new job in the same week. In the PM team, it took a bit of time, but everyone landed a job in 2 months max. So the thing is that uh, one interesting phenomena that happened was that the moment news got out that Stagela is closing operations, everyone's LinkedIn got flooded with job requests. So the HR, they know that this company is closing, and they would be curious about the staff. So this actually gives me an opportunity to talk about something. Whenever you're when regardless of what job you have, uh, always make sure that you have something important to talk about your current job. Always have some project or some aspect of your job that you can be proud of, and say that I was in this job, and this is this remarkable thing that I accomplished while I was in this company. Because otherwise, if you're asked what was the remarkable thing that you did in the past 2 years, having nothing to say because you hated your job is not a good sign. So, and yeah, the thing is that if you are in a company that is closing operations, if you had a project that you were proud of, if you did something remarkable, that is going to land you your next job fairly easily, and within the next month perhaps. At least we are fortunate that we are in a job market where there are enough jobs, where if you have done something great, people would be looking to hire you, and they would be competing against other companies to hire you.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, since we're talking about hiring, I'll probably try and yeah, pick this question. So what are the skill set that you are looking for when you're hiring candidates for Google? Since you have been interviewing candidates for the last 2 years, so
Hmm.
what kind of skill set do you generally see?
So I interview for new grads. So basically, anyone who has graduated in the last 3 to 4 years, I interview those candidates. And for these candidates specifically, what's important is that I is that they are able to understand the question in terms of the key components and how the key components can be solved with data structures and algorithms. So the ability to map a real world problem to a textbook data structures and algorithms problem, that is one skill that we're looking for. The other skill that we're looking for, which is kind of obvious, is that once they have come up with the algorithm, they should be able to write code that compiles. And a third is an inherent ability to comprehend the problem. So we do observe the amount of time that it took for someone to comprehend that this is what needs to be done. So yeah, these and these are things that form the basic components of what you would be doing uh, in Google. I think it's not just unique to Google. In any company, uh, we live in a time where the job description and the kind of projects that you would be doing keep changing. The ability to take a vague problem, an ambiguous problem, and being able to solve it, I think that is what counts the most. if you're on LinkedIn or if you follow tech blogs, one of the most common topics these days is how to solve an ambiguous problem or how to face ambiguity. I think one good way of knowing that you're prepared to face ambiguity is to know that you're able to map a real world problem, an ambiguous real world problem, into simpler blocks that can be solved in traditional ways.
Right. Okay. So here you talked about three things. I'll probably pick the first two, right? So you said first thinking about, I think breaking down the problem into smaller bits,
Hmm.
giving out your solution, and then being able to code it and obviously run it correctly, right? Now,
Yeah.
which part do you guys give more importance to, right? Is it let's put in two cases, right? So there is case A, which is obviously they've given you some answer, but you had to give, let's say, a lot of help there, like 3 4 hints to basically take them to the right direction, and then
Hmm.
finally they were able to code, right? So that's fine. And then there is case B where they literally took no help or very little help as compared to case A, but was
Hmm.
not able to compile the code correctly within the stipulated time, right? So
Right.
how do you guys evaluate those?
So if uh, so we also interview for interns. This is not relevant to our user base, I know, but we're usually very forgiving if there is an interns are basically students who are in their second year or third year right now. It's absolutely fine if they're not even able to write code. If they're able to come up with pseudocode, that's fine. If we're interviewing someone who is in a new grad, so basically who are just graduating, we do give importance to code. It's very important that their code compiles. But if they don't have a working algorithm, there is no point in being able to write code that compiles. So regardless of any scenario that you take, algorithm trumps code any day.
Okay.
So but once you have your algorithm in the bag, whether being able to write the code is a deal breaker or not depends on whether you are in your second year or third year, or whether you are about to graduate, or whether you have been in the or whether you have been employed for a couple of years. So yeah.
Got it. Right. Interesting. So I think those are the questions that I had with me right now, and I think I'll probably request all the participants to probably start posting questions on the chat, guys. Now is the time, and I'll start taking the questions from the chat. So feel free to post in any question related to the topics that we have discussed so far. Let me probably pick up the questions from here. Okay, so I have the first question here from Sayam. On which things resume uh, would you select resume upon, like more development side projects or competitive side or mix of both?
So development side, there is absolutely merit to that. There are many resumes where the candidates, they have mentioned that they developed something that was crucial. So we get a lot of candidates who have contributed to Linux, the open source code base, and whenever they have uh, contributed to something that is very crucial or important, that really gets them uh, on the fast track. But it's not very easy to judge. It's very difficult to look at something that you developed, and if it does not say anything about impact, it's very tough to judge. uh, but on the competitive side, and yeah, a lot of due diligence has to be done. But on the competitive side, it's very easy. You can just look at the rank and you know that this was the hackathon, this was the rank in the hackathon, so this guy is already good. uh, in the development side, you do not know if you were the sole contributor or if you were in a team of contributors, what was the specific contribution that you made. So
Right.
yeah.
Got it. Yeah. The next two questions are a bit personal. I will anyways ask while other people are making their questions. What do you find the most interesting about a Google job?
Most interesting about a Google job, I think it's the people, to be very honest. I work with a lot of very thoughtful, very intelligent people who constantly make me feel like I'm an imposter. And I think the ability to basically interact with them and learn from them, that is what makes me look forward to my job. Uh, and yeah, that's the most interesting thing. Uh, how
How did you feel when you got selected for Google?
the general sense of euphoria lasted for, I think, a week. After that, uh, it was like, okay, this is life now. I think so. That's the thing about all good things. They happen, and then you feel great about them, but then they become a part of your life, and then you're unable to feel great about them anymore because that's the status quo now.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think the most important takeaway, and also I mean, based on my experience, that I think it's the people which are very important, right? If you are surrounded by the right set of people, I think that's the key, right? Any good company that I've seen in the past where people are coming out, let's say staying longer in a particular company, I think the only reason why people did that was because of the people around them, right?
Exactly.
If they
Yeah.
really like the people, if the people are smarter than you would ideally want to stay there because
Hmm.
you're learning things. And if you're the smartest among the lot, then I mean, I think the learning sort of stops there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I have another question here from Priyanshu. Did you take any special course to learn data structure and algorithm before applying for a job, and what was your platform for competitive programming?
Hmm. So my so I did not take a special course as such. I I had downloaded the slides for data structures and algorithms that's available on Stanford's website, and then I had solved the book cracking the coding interview. So I had solved all the questions that were there in that book. That really helped, by the way. And uh, other than that, for competitive programming, uh, I I basically used both Hacker Rank and Hacker Earth. They helped me basically polish my coding skills more than anything. Uh, Algorithms, yes, they helped me develop a sense for algorithms, but the biggest help that they did was basically uh, bring my coding skills to the point where I know that mostly I'm going to write code that compiles. Uh, Hacker Rank is the answer. The short answer is Hacker Rank. Uh, so, where the next question: where did you enjoy most, startup or Google? Well, each has their flavor, by the way. I did enjoy startup a lot, and I do enjoy Google a lot. Also, uh, I think it's very tough to pick. But
Correct.
I think uh, Google. I'll be slightly biased towards Google because I have enjoyed more, and it has been a more on the intellectual side. Like I have felt glad that I got to learn this, or I got to interact with these people, or I got to be a part of this project. That thrill itself was unique to Google.
Right. Okay. So we have another question here. So does CodeChef or lead code ranks matter? I mean, to specify in resume.
Yeah, short answer is yes. If
Yes.
if it's if it's a good rank, please mention it. It will definitely count.
Great. That's a good question, Shubham. Um, okay, we'll wait for another couple of minutes, guys, for your questions. Okay, we have another one. In how much time did you complete whole data structure and algorithm and good in competitive programming?
Hmm. So this question is slightly tricky.
Yeah.
I already was aware of all the data structure and algorithm concepts because I was majoring in computer science. Like not technically, but my degree was MSc Tech. But I took all the courses. So basically, in bits, the courses are mostly the same. So basically, I took all the courses that a computer science engineer would take, and so I knew all the concepts. All I had to do was just brush up on them. So brushing upon them was I think 1.5 weeks of effort to like go through all the like even the minor details of like trees, binary trees, how to delete, how to balance them, all those things. So to go through the entire curriculum, 1.5 weeks. Then I think it was around two 2.5 weeks of just solving hard competitive programming questions on websites.
How much time should we spend on a problem in competitive coding?
This actually depends on the platform. There are a lot of questions which are designed to take upwards of 40 minutes. There are some questions which if you have not figured out within the first 15 minutes, you should just give up and move on to the next one. Otherwise, you're wasting too much time. So it really depends on the platform, and it really depends on the format. You just need to be cognizant of the number of questions that you have and the amount of time that you have. And one good metric to know if you're spending too much time on a bad solution is if you have spent 10 minutes on an approach and the approach seems to go nowhere, that's a dead end, and you need to start exploring alternates immediately.
On that, I have probably have a follow-up question, right? So,
Sure.
I think these candidates are right now, let's say, when we give them problem sets, let's say from lead code, right?
Mm.
Now, a lot of these people come back and say, hey, what is the time when we can probably say, hey, probably we are not able to do it, and let's go back and check the solution, right? So, what is the time that you would suggest while they're in the practice phase, not in any
Mm.
hackathon, nothing, right? What is the time that you would suggest and the approach that you would suggest them to take? Like, should they go ahead and spend half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hour? Like, what is the time that they should spend?
Right. So I think most questions uh, come in three parts. First part is the warm up question. Second is basically something that gets you on the question, like it introduces the question to you, and basically it's like a medium level question. And then the third question, which builds up on the second question, is the main question, the meat of the question. The warm up question you should be able to answer immediately. If you're not able to figure the answer to the warm up question in the first 5 minutes, then you should just look up the answer. Because a lot of times warm up questions, they are things that you either know or you don't know. They're either similar to some question that you have solved earlier, or something that you if it does not immediately click, maybe it will not click at all, and you should just look it up in the first 5 minutes. After that, I think it's a good idea to explore different possible approaches for a question. You should take 5 minutes or even 10 minutes to figure out the approach. What's important is to be quick in coding. I have seen a lot of candidates who take 20 minutes to just convert their algorithm to code. If you're going to take 20 minutes to just write the code, that means that you have uh, roughly uh, 30 or 25 minutes left to solve the problem, which often is not enough. So try to be quick in figuring out how to convert your algorithm to code so that you can limit that to just the last 10 minutes of your interview, so that the remaining part of your interview you can use just to think of a better way to solve the problem. A lot of times you might come up with a way to correctly solve the problem, but it's not the most optimal way. And you just need 5 or 7 minutes of just peaceful focusing on the problem, on the solution that you came up with, so that your n square solution becomes an O of n solution, or a O of log n solution. It just, yeah, it will automatically come to you. All you need is to just give it some time. And if you can shave off time from your coding part, then that is how you will have more time to think about your problem.
Right. So I think few things to summarize here, right? So I think one suggestion would be what I could understand from your approach is maybe when you have looked at the solution, maybe looked at just the approach to it, And once you have the approach, try and code it on your own and see, at least you're taking less time in terms of coding. Right? So at least from that question, you are at least getting the part where you're able to convert from the logic back into the coding, right? So that has to be really quick. So if in case you're still not able to solve the problem in the beginning and you've looked at the solution, but don't look at the code, look at the hints for it and then come back and code it quickly, right? So I think that's an important takeaway, right? And second, I think, which we always keep telling, right? I think try and come up with a solution. It doesn't have to be an optimal solution. In most of the cases, you will never be able to come up with an optimal solution in the first approach, right? And I think all the interviewers are okay with that, right? Because they will guide you after that. So at least come up with some solution, code it, and as Ritesh said, after that, it probably will take maybe one hint and maybe another few minutes for you to sit down and just think with your solution. And I think the confidence also plays some part, right? Because you already know that you have at least run the solution, your problem is working. It's just about optimizing it now, right? So I think come up with the solution and then try and optimize it. Don't try and optimize it in first go itself. In most of the cases, it may not happen.
So I have seen, so this happens to the good candidates, not the candidates who are unprepared. It happens to the good candidates that they think of a solution, but they know that this solution is an O of n cube solution, so they don't even attempt to think more about it. A lot of times that's the problem. And in the end, you are left with no working solution, because even so, let's say that you are just going about thinking of alternates to your O of n cube solution, and in the end you have not found any, but your O of n cube solution also has edge cases that you have not ironed out because you didn't give it enough time, and so you don't have any solution that is bug free.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. That's a good suggestion. Okay, we have another question here, which says pretty straightforward. Any suggestions to beginners?
Any suggestions to beginners? Depends on what kind of a beginner you are. If you don't know anything about computer science, figure out the data structures and algorithms part, get it on lock. Coding, that's just learning a syntax. You can learn Java, C++, Python. That's not a big deal at all. What's most important is to be really good at data structures and algorithms. And no matter what kind of question is thrown at you, being able to just figure out what algorithm will solve that basic question in the most optimal way, that is a sense that you'll automatically develop once you have solved enough questions. That is what happens with many candidates also. A lot of candidates who are in that phase of interview questions, who have solved in only the interview questions for like the past 3 to 4 months, give them any question, they'll automatically figure out the fastest way to solve it with the standard algorithms that they have learned in college. That's a sense that you have to develop. So focus on that. Language can come to you anytime.
Yeah, and I think I do get these questions so many times, right? So when we're talking about the program, so people come back and say, hey, are you going to teach us C, C++, Java, Python? So people still have that confusion, right? And these are people who are already going through the engineering. I mean, they've already almost covered the engineering program. So guys, don't give so much importance to a particular language. Language is bound to change. Maybe as Ritesh said today, because when they hire you, probably they might be doing some project in Python, and tomorrow they might do something in Go, and maybe in 6 months something else will come, and you are supposed to learn that and implement, right? Yeah. So they don't expect you to be a Java developer or a Python developer or a whatever Go developer, right? I mean, they expect you to be a software engineer, right? And that's why they're testing you on a DS algo and not on a particular language basis, right? And it varies. It varies from service industry to product-based companies and different tier companies, right? Especially for the tier one companies, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Facebook. I mean, all those tier one companies, I think that's the same funda that works. First, try and get your DSL go sorted. Yeah. And then I think syntax you will learn, right? And once you've learned the syntax, it's just about practice. That's the only shortcut to it. I think in the beginning, it would take a lot of time. Right, but yeah, I think that's the only suggestion.
So I think one of the most misleading aspects about computer science is that there are these C or Java courses in college where in the exam they ask you a lot of these tricks, the compilation tricks or the syntax tricks. Nobody cares about them. So even though you know the hacks of bitwise operations and all those things, and those trick questions may be asked to you in your college exam, they will never factor into any interview ever. They will only care about data structures and algorithms.
Right. Yeah. Any other questions, guys? Anything else that you guys have to add? Maybe we can take one more last question before we wrap up, if in case there is any. Cool. So I think we don't have any. Great. So with that, I think we are at the end of the today's series. Thanks, Ritesh. Thanks a lot. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for giving time. Really appreciate it.
So it was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks all the participants for joining in, tuning in. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye bye. Good night. Take care.
Good night.